Good afternoon, everybody. It's February 11, 2024, 5:54 p.m. I was going to start this a little bit sooner, but as soon as I set up to record it, the criminals turned off my laptop. I have an old laptop. It was working fine when I moved to Kentucky, but since I'm living here, the criminals have scratched it, dented the cover, chipped it over here, dirtied my tag. I had that tag on it for years. Pulled the tag up here. I don't know if you could see this. This is my mouse pad. They pulled the fabric off my mouse pad. This is my second mouse since I'm living here. But anyway, the criminals stopped me from recording. So, a subscriber asked me to review a topic about how I deal with the police. But I'm going to add, it's not just about dealing with the police, but about dealing with whether or not you get Baker acted, whether or not they take you to see a psychiatrist, whatever it is, how to deal with that, and how I dealt with it back in Manalapan, New Jersey when I lived at 52 Sutton Drive, in a home I lived in for 30 years as the original owner. And yes, the Manalapan Police Department kidnapped me on December 10, 2018, but we'll get to that. So anyway, I just want to say for the record, one, this is Lorraine Alternative Homesteading. Welcome newcomers, welcome to my channel. I'm going to discuss how I have dealt with the police in the past, and I'll just say for the record, years ago, I actually liked the cops. I had a lot of respect for them as a child, growing up. We have a retired one in our family. I mean, I haven't seen him in a long time, but we have a retired one in our family. I dated a retired fire chief. I was in a relationship with a Marine sniper. When I had a bona fide psychopath stalker harassing me, Freehold, New Jersey police officer testified on my behalf, and he was absolutely wonderful. But as I've mentioned in another video, I believe it was for another reason. Although he was a really nice guy, he was a handsome guy, he was a nice guy, he was very sweet, very thoughtful. He ended up getting promoted. Okay, I don't know where he's at now, and I actually do not remember his name, but I was so grateful to him. So in the past, I had some excellent experiences with police. This is before I became targeted, okay? So I'd look up to them, I respected them. I don't have those same sentiments anymore. Although, you know, I feel that there are some good ones out there. There are. But if they're going to go along to get along, then they're in the same category as the bad ones, because they're not protecting our rights. So, all right, let's back up a little bit. So, you know, I've had some very good experiences with law enforcement in the past. However, when I became targeted in Manalapan, New Jersey, that all went down the tubes. It was absolutely a nightmare. And as most targeted people know, when you file an incident report, they don't take you seriously. But I didn't realize I was targeted. I just knew that I had lived there for so long. I knew how hard I worked on my house and my property. I knew how fastidious I was with my cats, how healthy they were, and so many bizarre things were happening. And in fact, it was a police officer, when I'd filed a report about what was happening at my feral cat colony at the Pine Brook Care Center in Manalapan, New Jersey, he suggested that I install trail cameras. So I did. I received permission from the property owners, the manager there. He said, as long as you face your cameras away from the parking lot, away from our front entrance, you can put cameras back in our woods, no big deal. So I did. I caught a lot of people. And then, of course, when I went to the Manalapan police, after I had caught these people, they weren't taking anything seriously. Okay, so that was one of the first indications that they were on the wrong side of my history. So I also want to bring your attention to, I watch a lot of investigative journalists, law enforcement, what do they call them? Constitutional reporters on YouTube. One of them is called Delete Laws, Lawz. His name is Chile de Castro. I would imagine that the cops can't stand his guts. He knows the law. That's the thing. He knows the law, and he will stand up to anything that they put in his path, and he'll sue them. So, anyway, how do I deal with him? And believe it or not, even though I'm like rallying behind all of these guys that when the cops pull them over, of course, some of these guys that are out there, they're really like bucking for trouble. They're out there with their cameras and just for YouTube and whatever, and to see how far they can, press an officer or whatever. I don't think that's cool. I do think it's okay to photograph them. I think you should. I think you should videotape them, because some of the horror stories that I've viewed on YouTube is just despicable. Absolutely despicable. And I'm so glad that some people have sued and won huge, massive lawsuits. But we shouldn't have to be suing law enforcement because they've been abusive. That should not happen. Taxpayers should not have to foot the bill of millions of dollars. The most recent one was $8 million paid out, which is the largest lawsuit ever in abuse of force case. There are some that are settled for $2 million and $3 million. This is a lot of money. This should not be happening. Okay, so actually in New Jersey, whenever I've gone to the police department, I've always been polite. And I'm generally a polite person. I bring my evidence. I speak respectfully to them. I don't bully anybody. I give them all the information. I wait for them to ask questions. I ask them questions. I have recorded them. I have recorded them over the phone. I've recorded them here in Kentucky. I've recorded them in New Jersey. There was a time when the Manalapan police showed up and I had my digital recorder in the palm of my hand. And they probably knew it before I even walked out the door. And I had tested the digital recorder, installed new batteries, did a test recording inside. It played back just fine. Police officer says, "Is that a digital recorder? Is that a recorder?" I said, "Yes, it is." And I just continued talking. When I get back in the house, the entire recording, including my test, was gone, erased, and the batteries were dead. So they got to show you the kinds of technology that some law enforcement possesses. Now, I will attest to the fact that Manalapan, New Jersey, they are armed to the hilt between new vehicles, new toys. They built a new building with a thin blue line going to it down the road. I'm sure they've got their weapons of mass destruction in there. Their lasers, tasers, surveillance equipment. They're probably their own fusion center. Okay, so that really bothered me. I have a right to record the interaction between the police. And the fact that I told them that, yes, I was recording and then continued to speak. They did not say to not record. They did not say they was going to delete something that belonged to me. And actually, when I requested body cam footage every time, I never get a response. It's just never available, and I have a right to that as well. So yeah, that pisses me off. So what I do is I generally place things in writing. That's what I do. So if I have an interaction with a police officer, and sometimes after the fact, like when they leave, I'll think of something else that I said or didn't say, didn't understand, I didn't remember to get their badge number or something. I'll either call and record the call or place it in writing, or place it in writing to myself. In Manalapan, I always placed it in writing. And in fact, because the Manalapan police refused to take an accurate police report, refused to accurately report anything that I said, I started to place it in writing. I wasn't calling them up anymore when something happened in my house, when somebody vandalized anything. What I would do is I would send them an email, because you had the ability to do that. I would send them an email and simply state, this is in lieu of calling to report an incident. So this way, you are able to cut and paste verbatim. I give you permission to cut and paste my testimony, my incident, directly into your incident report, so that there's no question as to what transpired on my end. And of course, that never happens. Never. They always reinterpreted, reformulated my incidences. And then, of course, when I would FOIA request them, I would receive an empty page. So how I dealt with them was to place things in writing, even if I knew that they weren't going to respond. I would hand deliver them sometimes. I would email them and then mail them. I would send them certified mail. Since I lived down the block, sometimes I would simply drop it off, at their desk, and have the woman there sign a sheet of paper that I hand delivered a letter. Just the way I did when I was dropping off papers and responses and stuff to attorneys. So, it saves a little bit of money. You have it immediately. You don't have to wait for mail, or you don't have to wait for the green card to get returned to you. That is if you live close enough to a police station. So now when the Manalapan Police Department broke into my house with Tina Booth from the Monmouth PESS, and after Tina Booth left, okay, and for those of you who don't know what happened, was on December 10th, 2018, I had filed a couple of incident reports for vandalism. Now, when I say vandalism, this is obvious vandalism. Like somebody embedding an X on the side of my house, which didn't disappear, and I have photos of. Or how about the vandalism to my back door, or my garage door when somebody broke in? Or how about the sawing off of tree limbs? Bona fide evidence and proof. So Lieutenant Thomas Mantle calls me and says, let me drop off a property loss statement. Now, I've never known them to drop anything off before, and I never received a property loss statement before. But anyway, we're going to fast forward to Tina Booth breaking into my house and deciding that I had to go to Central State Emergency Room. And she says, well, I think that you have a disorder. I said, really? I said, well, by what criteria did you make that determination? I mean, I have more years of psychology background than she did. She was not licensed in any way, and she was a new employee, a fairly new employee there. So I simply asked her, I said, by what criteria did you formulate that diagnosis? No comment. Zero. Zip. So I'm going to fast forward. After she leaves, and I'm stuck there with Sergeant Carey, I'm forgetting the cop's name. I always forget his name for some reason. It was the first time I'd seen him. Um, Police officer CASELLA in my house. And I'm getting ready to get my things. You know, these people violated my rights. I had plans for that day. My cat was murdered by these criminals, directed energy weapon, the night before, and I stayed up with him all night. So these criminals do this to me, and I've got a dead cat in my house. So they're saying, well, you know, you've got to come with us. I said, no, you know, I'm not. So the officer turns to me and says, well, you can either go voluntarily or involuntarily. So, I mean, I obviously knew what that meant. And I said to myself, if I tell him I'm not going, and that's involuntary, he's going to handcuff me in my own house. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go voluntary. So I've got to use the restroom. I've got to feed my cats. I've got to scoop litter. You know, I've got stuff to do. I've got to lock up my house. Well, they were impatient. This cop waited outside of my bathroom, knocking on the door as I'm peeing. Then when I come out, I go to reach for my handbag. He goes to grab it out of my hand, and I grab it back from him. I said, don't you touch my handbag. And then CASELLA, he's at my Pella backsliding door, the one that I pinned because of the break-ins. I pinned vertically and horizontally into the door frame. My expensive Pella door pinned vertically and horizontally, and he's trying to open it without unlocking it. So I told him to stop. I said, you're going to break my door. So I have no problem speaking up back to these bullies that were invading my house without a warrant. So getting back to the involuntary or voluntary, I knew at that time that I was going to be home that night. I don't care. I just knew. I just, you know, whether it's my guardian angel, whether it's the power of manifestation, whatever it is, I knew I was not going to stay there. So I go into the EMS truck that's waiting for me outside, all plans. And you can see on the video footage, I mean, I'll get a link to it. I'll repost it here. Of them on my driveway. This is all plans in advance to discredit me, to harass me. These bullies to bloat their watch list. 2 months after they did the same thing to my friend Kim Straub in Tennessee, who's no longer with us. So I get into the EMS truck, and the guy is talking, and the police officer is just sitting opposite me. So I turn to the EMS guy. So I'm chatting him up, and I'm saying, "Oh, well, you have, you know, such a busy job. You know, you must not get a lot of sleep, do you?" And he says, "No." He says, "Sometimes I don't get to sleep for 13 hours." I said, "You're kidding me. You don't get to sleep for 13 straight hours?" And the police officer, you could tell he's like getting pissed off. And the reason he's getting pissed off is because Tina effing Booth, loser girl, little loser girl, who prostitutes her young daughter on Facebook in a bikini, when there are predators out there, tells you how good her judgment is. Tina Booth labeled me because when I was showing them the vandalism of my tree, she says, well, how do you sleep? I said, well, actually, I didn't get to sleep all that much last night, but I didn't tell her that I stayed up late with my cat who was dying. She used that in the report that she wrote to the hospital about me. Yes, so here I am chatting it up with the EMS guy who doesn't sleep for 13 hours straight, and he's working with people that are dying, going to the emergency room. I wasn't up for 13 hours straight. I wasn't working on some dying patient. Or yeah, I was working with my cat who's being hit with directed energy weapons. So this tells you what hypocrites these people are. They're all hypocrites. So I just want to tell you, if this ever happens to you, never sign anything. Do not sign anything. Okay? So I go to the emergency room. They drop me off there. I had not eaten. I was starving. I'm going to tell you, I even wrote this in my complaint to them, that like they will try to kill you with their food. You read the labels of their food, it's all genetically modified stuff. It's filled with sodium and sugar. I was starving, like I just wanted a salad or something. They give me Cheerios, like sugar frosted flakes and Cheerios, and oh my god, and black coffee. Oh, it was just horrible. It was just horrible. But anyway, this is something that Kim didn't do when she was Baker acted. And I learned from her because she told me. So they were going to take my handbag away. I said, oh, before you do, I'd like to photograph what's in my bag. I said, okay. So, and of course they were going to take my phone too. So I made sure to photograph everything in my bag. Anything of value, I actually stuck in my sock. Anything that I thought that they might steal from me, I kept. Kim's evidence was stolen from her handbag. She carried a huge handbag with her. So when she was Baker acted into that behavioral health place, she did not think about photographing anything that her bag contained. So she didn't. But I did, and they permitted me to do it. Not only that, but I asked the nurse there, the person at the desk. I said, "Do you have a piece of paper and a pen?" So they gave me paper and pen, and I actually wrote down on that paper everything that was in my handbag. And then I photographed that, and I folded that up and I stuck it in my sock. Okay, so that's what I did. They asked me for my insurance. I don't have insurance. So that's a caveat. They don't want to keep you there all that long if you don't have money to pay. And I told them, I said, I'm not paying for anything. I said, so, I have to be home tonight. I don't have insurance. I'm not signing anything. I'm not signing myself in. And I said, okay. And I told every person that worked there that the police were retaliating against me for filing an incident report. And that they actually broke into my house. And I said the same thing about Tina Booth. So everybody I spoke to, which was only, two women at the desk and 2 nurses. I never saw a doctor, never saw a licensed psychologist. I never saw a psychologist. I never saw a shrink. No medical doctor, no nothing. Only a nurse. And 2 people that were at the desk. So I did not sign anything. I refused to sign anything, but I did have to sign, I think it was I had to sign to get my report after I was going to leave, and to get the contents of, to get my bag back, my phone and my bag. But I had no medical insurance, no nothing. They had the audacity to try to put it through the Medicaid that I had at the time, which of course it wasn't going to pay any of it. And after years, I got all of that stuff removed from my report, except for one. And I tell them every time, I said, no, I'm not paying it. I will never pay it. You can send it to the Manalapan Police Department. So that's how I deal with police. I'm generally polite. I'm generally respectful. There was a police officer here in Kentucky who's a really nice guy. And while he didn't accurately report, and it's not his fault. It's not his fault because Ross Murray, the county lawyer, oversees everything, and he is their handler. Yeah, I'm going to call him the handler. He decides what goes on the report and what doesn't. He tells them what to do and what shouldn't do, although it should be the absolute reverse. And in fact, the Attorney General's office stated to me on the phone that, oh no, the county lawyer reports under the sheriff, not the other way around, not the reverse. So there you have that. So actually, I have answered questions in New Jersey, for instance. And the police there, they really get off on pulling innocent people over because they want to ticket you. They want to make some money. So I pulled up to a stoplight. This is on Main Street in Englishtown. I go to turn left. I get pulled over by a young cop, and he's smiling. I pull over. He says, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" I said, "No, I don't." And he says, "Well, your insurance or your registration is about to expire." And I had already paid it, but it was the weekend. So they didn't receive my payment yet. Like, they wouldn't have received my payment for maybe another day or two and have it posted. So I'm thinking, and then he says, "Well, do you know how I knew?" Like, it's like it was a joke. He had a smile on his face, like, like kids would say when they're, like, when you're a kid, "I know something you don't know. I know something you don't know." That's the expression he had on his face. He said, "Do you know how I knew that your registration was going to expire?" I said, "No, tell me." He said, "Well, you see that sign over there?" I turned. I said, "Yeah, you mean that neon sign over there in front of the town building?" He says, "It has a camera in it." I said, "Really? So you mean every time I stop there, I'm being photographed?" He said, "Yeah." And I'm thinking, I'm being radiated while I'm sitting in my car at a red light. Every time I stop in front of that sign, I'm being scanned. So yes, that's what happens in New Jersey. The police think it's funny. They think it's just so funny to pull you over like that. I was also pulled over. I was also pulled over in Englishtown. I wanted to feed my cat colony. It was late because I had something to do the next day. I wasn't going to get there as early as I usually do, so I went like really late. I think it was like 11 p.m. I wanted to check up on them, feed them and stuff. I get pulled over by a cop. Like, "What are you doing in Englishtown at 11 o'clock at night?" I kid you not. And he wrote me a ticket. So I finally have to wait and go speak to this guy. I forget what they call these guys. And I'm waiting in the hallway. They're calling people. Nobody calls my name. I finally go up and tap on the door because I'm the last one there. And I said, nobody's called me. So he looks at, a report or whatever. He looks at me. And I remember I was 51 at the time, or 54 or something like that. He said, "Well, I went into the hallway. I was looking for a 50-something-year-old woman." And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry. You don't look like your age." And like I'm rolling my eyes. It's like, I just want to get out of here. So I sit down with him and I tell him that the cop pulls me over because it's 11 o'clock at night in Englishtown. Doesn't even tell me why he pulls me over. Have no idea why he's pulling me over. There wasn't even a stop sign there. No stop sign. And this is the caveat. There are certain places in Englishtown, there are no stop signs. You're just required to stop. And people who live there know that you have to stop. So you just stop. So I stop and turn. But there's no stop sign there. And he gives me a friggin' ticket. So anyway, this guy that I'm talking to, and I forget what they call these guys, they negotiate down your ticket. He turns to me, says, I kid you not. He says, well, I'm going to make this really easy for you. He says, do you like ice cream? I said, yes. He says, well, this is going to be like having ice cream. And I'm thinking, what is wrong with this guy? I want to get out of here. I just want to get my ticket, pay whatever I'm supposed to pay, and leave. So he gets it down, you know, a few dollars. This is like negotiation. Like you get a ticket for doing nothing. And then you negotiate with these idiots to not pay whatever you're supposed to pay. And they think they're doing you a favor by reducing your ticket for something that you didn't do. And they're just trying to rake in the bucks. So that's how I deal with the Manalapan Police Department. When they weren't taking my incident reports, I would place everything in writing. I'd even send them the evidence via email. Please write an incident report. I give you permission to cut and paste my testimony in the body of your incident report. They would never do it. Would never receive responses and stuff. So anyway, if you get Baker acted, you do not consent. You don't give them any insurance. You're not going to pay it. You tell them you're not going to pay it. And by the way, I spent 6 hours there. And the only reason I was there as long as I was because it took that long for my mother, who was working at the time, to drive down. It took her like 3 hours for some reason. Took her 3. Oh, that's why it was a Friday night. You know, they love to like Baker Act you on a weekend so that you can't leave. So it took my mother like 3 hours to get down there and drive me home. And if she wasn't able to do it, they probably would have kept me there. Either that, or I would have had to have walked home from Freehold, which wouldn't be the worst possible thing. But no fun after, what they did to me. But no, I was home in 6 hours. So how do I deal with the police? I'm fairly polite. I give them the information. I comply, for the most part. I answer some questions. But if there's a question that they're asking that I don't want to answer, like this happened with the former sheriff, I turned to him. This is a true story. He was asking me a question I didn't want to answer. So I turned to him and looked him straight in the face. I said, "Are you a Freemason?" And he said, "Why do you ask that?" I said, "I'm just curious. Are you Freemason?" He said, "No." I said, "Okay." So I didn't answer his question, but he answered mine. But anyway, so let's talk about one of the people that I follow on YouTube. Wait 1 second. So I follow, where'd he just go? Okay, I just had him up here. Let's see, let me just find it. Here it is. So I follow this guy. Here, let's see. His name is Delete Laws. Oh, and look at this. You see that? See the way that's spinning? They don't want me to record this. It's spinning. He says, "I have made it my mission to expose policing in America." This is what it looks like. Delete Laws. And he sent this to me. I sent him some information
In the year 2002, I was no-knock raided by the Chief of Police, Michael Moore, of LAPD with an entire SWAT team, twice in the same month. Since that date, I began studying the history of America and constitutional law. I am an autodidactic constitutional law scholar. Over the past couple years, what I've done is I've been able to devise a system, understanding that the police have...
Disappeared again. Okay, well, I'm going to be cutting this short because I've got to go take care of my chickie poos. But this is him right here. Okay, and he sent this to me, which was really nice. He sent this to me. This is a trifold that you should keep in your vehicle. You can go to his website, deletelaws.com. He sent this to me to keep on my person when I'm driving, in case I ever get pulled over by the police, to invoke my right to remain silent. Right? I don't have to answer any questions. Right? So this is, if you would like to receive these, they do cost money, but he is willing to work with people who cannot afford this stuff because he wants everybody to have this. Okay? So he sent it to me for free for sending him some information, which was really cool. I thank him very much. And he sent me the trifold. And the trifold actually has a whole bunch of laws. I'll give you, this is information here. Like, for instance, if a cop is extending a stop, it's Rodriguez versus the United States, 2018. If a cop wants to ID a passenger, there is a lawsuit. Passengers do not have to give ID. If a cop smells marijuana, Commonwealth versus Barr, 2021. Odor is not probable cause. Get out passenger, Arizona versus Johnson, 2009. Both cases state you have to get out for quote-unquote officer safety. I curse a cop, Cohen versus California. I will use any words I want. Let's see. These are all lawsuits. The right to film cops. I always film cops' faces. This is what he says here. It's the right to film cops. Cop driver, get out. Pennsylvania versus Mims, 1977. The law is exit for officer safety. So there are laws in place. You have to know the law. I don't drive all that much, folks, but there are targeted people that drive a lot. They drive back and forth to work, especially the guys, you know. They really get on the guys with driving. So go to his website. It's deletelaws.com. LAWZ, and check him out. Check him out on YouTube and check out his constitutional policing, exposing corrupt cops. And let me tell you, he's exposed a lot of corrupt cops. But to answer your question, subscriber, I'm generally polite with the police until they're not polite with me. And if there's a question I don't want to answer, I will ask them a question instead. Like, are you a Freemason? Put that one in your arsenal, boys and girls. I have to sign off for now and block up my birdies.